Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. One of the greatest actresses nominated for the Academy Award multiple times without a win, and one of the best screwball comedians of the golden age of Hollywood, Irene Dunne is considered one of the foremost performers of that era, known for her versatility, style and sophistication. Why Irene Dunne had to constantly cry for her successful career? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. I adore Irene Dunne. Who doesn't? She's great in everything. She's great at everything. So why is she so little known these days? How can a woman who was an A-list movie star for 20 years during the golden age of classic Hollywood be so little remembered? Obviously she's a big deal to old Hollywood-loving cinephiles, but to the public at large she's more or less forgotten. I think this mainly comes down to the fact that she doesn't really fit in anywhere. She was a jack of all trades and consequently isn't specifically identified with one genre. In many ways her versatility was her downfall. Though she has not made a movie in 33 years, her work remains popular with new generations of moviegoers, through frequent showings at film retrospectives and on The Late Show. For a while she accepted the occasional television role or guest appearance with Perry Como, but for the most part her public life after she called cut to her movie career became centred on business and charity activities and the United Nations, where she served as an alternate delegate in the second Eisenhower administration. Out of the movies she nevertheless was Hollywood's most respectable alumni. Irene Dunne was a star in an era of great women stars. She excelled in musicals, weepies and screwball comedies. She could certainly hold her own against the greatest of the era, Carole Lombard, Jean Arthur, Katharine Hepburn, but there was something slightly more mature about Irene. She could be silly, but she never seemed the damsel in distress. No matter what the situation, Irene always seemed to be able to handle it herself. If she let a man intervene, well, it was because she wanted it that way. The way she talked was the single strongest impression I have to this actress, not her poise, her charm, her delivery, or her warm appeal in a specific role. The tip of her tongue pressed ever so lightly behind her teeth, which automatically dimpled her cheeks and caused her to arch her eyebrows, not in any exaggerated manner, but just enough to transform her whole face into the most beguiling girlish sauciness that endeared her to every member of the audience, men and women alike, and children too. One heard it even as one saw it. Laughter was invariable. One would succumb. It was inexpressibly endearing. But then respectability had adorned her career from the beginning. Her life seemed charmed with normalcy. Among the stars of women's pictures, Irene Dunne was arguably the most scandal-proof, even when she lived apart from her husband during the first 6 years of her career in Hollywood. But Irene often played women who were carried away by passion. She was a top-billed star for the rest of her career, though she was never the queen of any one category. She was a great dramatic actress, but not Betty Davis. She could handle comedy with the best of them, but Carole Lombard and Claudette Colbert were more celebrated. She was a beauty, but not Hedy Lamarr, a great singer, but no Jeanette MacDonald. Her classic partnerships with Cary Grant and Charles Boyer don't compare to William Powell and Myrna Loy's. She came to the screen in a series of weepy Hollywood women's pictures, then evolved into a regal screen comedienne of the 30s and 40s. Dunne was born December 20th, 1898 in Louisville, Kentucky. The daughter of a music teacher, she was raised around music and had a natural talent for it. She won a scholarship to the Chicago Musical College and hoped to become an opera singer, but did not pass her audition with the Metropolitan Opera Company. However, she found success in musical theatre, eventually appearing in several Broadway productions. While playing the lead in a road company of Showboat, Dunne was discovered by Hollywood and was soon on her way to a varied and prosperous acting career. Irene got her start in stage musicals and was brought to Hollywood after starring in a road version of Showboat. Her debut film, 1930's Leathernecking, wasn't much, but her next film, Cimarron, put her on the map to stay. Irene became the queen of the weepies, dramatic films that appealed to a female audience. She had hit after hit in such films as Backstreet, The Silver Cord, If I Were Free, and The Age of Innocence. Heavy dramatic roles are essential for an actress of my type. I know definitely that the status that I have achieved has been achieved through tears. So for my career I cry, she said. With her lovely operetta-style voice, Irene always seemed to be a Jerome Kern gal. Although she sang the lovely Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, a song that was always associated with her and played when she entered restaurants throughout her life, she was especially pleased that Kern wrote a song just for her in the movie version of the Broadway show. It was one she sang to perfection, and one that described her perfectly. Lovely to look at. Dunne titles that wonderfully showcase her versatility. Talk about range. It was Dunne's voice that brought her to Hollywood. Her big break came in a western, and she was equally at home in comedy and drama. While I enjoy Dunne most in comedies, I'm also a pre-code Hollywood fan, which led to a natural curiosity for the actress's 1930 to 34 work. The scenarios that Dunne's characters find themselves in during this period certainly fall under the pre-code mantle. Open wedlock, illicit affairs, monumental motherly sacrifices, and battling against a vengeful old schoolmate trying to knock off her child. But even if the material goes there, Dunne's characters never reach the unabashed level of, say, Barbara Stanwyck or Joan Crawford. While the women Dunne portrayed committed acts society deemed immoral during the 1930s, they generally retained an aura of dignity and didn't sleep their way to the top or completely revel in debauchery. Irene Dunne's finest moment in the movies, the sparkling, hilarious screwball comedy The Awful Truth. It's one of my all-time favourite films, and it's every bit as funny today as it was in 1937, and one of the few movies that will make you laugh out loud, no matter how many times you've seen it. In the first half of the 1930s, Dunne had made her name suffering nobly in a string of melodramatic women's pictures, so it was something of a shock to audiences, and apparently Irene herself, when she turned her hand to comedy in the uproarious Theodora Goes Wild, and followed that up in 1937 with the first of her 3 screen appearances with Cary Grant. She received top billing each time. Indeed, it was The Awful Truth that helped turn Grant from a popular but indistinct B-list leading man to the top-flight star and comedic giant we all know and still love today. Irene never considered herself a fashion plate, and allegedly did not enjoy posing for portraits, but she had a kind of effortless American elegance that always looked just right. Irene seemed to wear an awful lot of furs in her films, and, in the unenlightened age before faux, she carried it off with great aplomb. No European glamour with a capital G, just good old American good taste, clean lines, and movie star grace. The Awful Truth tells the story of a society couple who file for divorce after a series of comedic misunderstandings, and then proceed to sabotage each other's subsequent relationships, reuniting just before their divorce becomes final. Both stars are in top form, but Irene steals the show with one of the true bravura comedic turns of the 1930s, a decade that had plenty of fine comedies. Pretending to be her soon-to-be ex-husband's low-class sister, she causes mayhem by crashing a soiree for his new socialite girlfriend, drinking, spilling made-up family secrets and performing a tacky musical number to the appalled fiancé's parents. "Don't anybody leave this room, I've lost my purse," will never not be funny. The film won Leo McCarey his first Best Oscar and was probably the closest Irene ever came to a win. She lost to Louise Rainier for the second time in 2 years, making her the first Oscar nominee to lose twice to the same person. But if you're a huge fan, you get to worry if you dislike a certain performance of a favourite, and you're terrified if you don't like a performance that much for a second time. Ever since I saw her in The Awful Truth for the first time, I announced it to the whole world everywhere how brilliant she was. Now imagine what a slap in the face it could have been if I hadn't liked her this time. However, it is a could have. I shouldn't have worried. She was just as good, if not better, than the first time. One word sums up this performance the best: laughter. Irene laughs, Carrie laughs, you laugh. It's just fantastic how much laughter you can experience. Irene shows several ones, giggling, chuckling, cackling, and all of them are just brilliant. Just imagine the scene where Lucy gives a concert and Jerry falls with his chair. Irene's laugh after the song is so brilliantly timed, and it's so damn funny. She gradually cracked me up. First I was smiling when Cary Grant fell, then I started laughing, and when Irene laughed I almost died. Dunne was dubbed the First Lady of Hollywood because of her poise, charm and warmth, giving her a regal bearing that manifested itself on film. She once said, "I drifted into acting and drifted out. Acting is not everything, living is." And we are so lucky for the times that she drifted in, because she left us some of the most wonderful films from Hollywood's golden age. It is a bit puzzling as to why Dunne never won the coveted Oscar, as she was popular among her peers. Known to be a lovely and gracious woman, as well as a talented performer, she displayed her versatility in a wide range of genres, with her 5 nominations encompassing 4 different genres, an epic western, 2 comedies, a drama and a romance. With her talent and list of classic films, it's also a wonder that Dunne isn't remembered along with her peers from that era. Don't get me started on the mystifying decisions made in this arena over the years, but the most shameful of all is the snubbing of a woman who graciously lost 5 times and lived to be 91 years old. Dunne's contemporaries, Myrna Loy and Barbara Stanwyck, both received them. The Academy also bizarrely re-rewarded Jimmy Stewart, Laurence Olivier and Alec Guinness, and somehow contrived to award both of Irene's Awful Truth co-stars, Cary Grant and Ralph Bellamy. But the woman who was billed above both of them got nothing. Makes me mad to this day. She was at least a Kennedy Center honoree in 1985. However, many of her films were remade in later years, and those became the better-known versions. Notably, Anna and the King of Siam was remade as The King and I, and Love Affair was remade as An Affair to Remember, with both remakes starring Deborah Kerr, another actress who lost out on Oscar night several times. Or perhaps it's because her last film was over a half-century ago, 1952, with the lackluster It Grows on Trees, and she opted to quit while she was on top. Despite a late start, Dunne also left showbiz relatively early. Her last film was 1952's It Grows on Trees, and while she did some bits of TV and radio, she had essentially retired by the mid-50s. No longer on the big screen, she went on to live a high-profile, glamorous life as Hollywood royalty. Best-dressed lists, charity boards, humanitarian work, and an appointment as a delegate to the United Nations kept her in the public eye. She was also a frequent presenter at the Academy Awards, but never acted again. There were no celebrity marriages, no scandals, no rumours, and thankfully no tragic early death. She was just a consummate professional, beloved by all, and married to her dentist husband for 38 years. But competence, likability and fidelity do not a mythology make. Throughout her film career, spanning from 1930, Irene Dunne displayed a vision of women as suffering, giddy, dignified, delightful, and always competent and in command of their inner strength. In real life, she was married to the same man for 37 years until his death, was never part of any scandal, and devoted herself to good works after her retirement from the screen. Irene Dunne was a team player, almost always the team ace, by the way, never hogging the spotlight or overshadowing her teammates. Her great gallery of performances speak of not just talent, but of wit, strength and intelligence. Unlike others from her era, Dunne also stayed away from drama and scandal in her real life. In her later years, she remained active, devoting time to philanthropic causes, christening the Mark Twain riverboat at Disneyland in 1955 at the request of Walt Disney, and becoming the first woman elected to Technicolor's board of directors in 1965. In 1959, President Dwight Eisenhower named her an alternate delegate to the UN General Assembly. She received the Kennedy Center Honors in 1985 and died in 1990 at the age of 91. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Irene Dunne?